There's a mistake, there's a failure, you wish you did something, you start shutting yourself. Instead of throwing that away and pretending like it never happened, you take it and you treat it like it's a brick. So you've got a failure, that's a brick. You've got a success, that's a brick. You win, you have a success, you place that brick. You fail, you're upset, you place that brick. Because both the failures and bricks are foundation of the home and the life you're building.
Welcome to What I Meant to Say. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and I'm here today with Ben Albert. Actually, for the second time, he's an absolute rock star for coming back because my worst fear happened with my recording or the podcast production process. And I forgot to push record last time. And we had the most epic conversation. And he is cool enough to come back. He's an amazing marketing specialist and has a killer COVID growth story that so he's hosting 5 podcasts, Real Business Connections. And Ben, thank you so much for being here today.
Excited to be here again. I joked before we jumped online, I'm probably just going to disagree with everything I said last time. So this is fun for me. It was how long ago was it? It was
maybe about a month ago. Yeah. By the time we kind of pulled everything together and you were gracious enough to come back. So I thank you because I know the last time we talked about, making mistakes and how to grow through challenges. And man, we finished that conversation last time. I enjoyed it so much. As soon as you hung up, I went, oh my gosh. So it took a little grace from myself, and thankfully you were willing to come back. So I'm excited to now share with everybody else what we learned about each other last time. And you have a tremendous story from, we all experienced the pandemic and there was so many things that were taken away from us. But your story of growth and the way that you have learned through business to help other people and your idea that everybody deserves to be seen and shine, and you help them do that. So let's start there and let people know, how you came to be this marketing entrepreneur straight out of COVID and you're, all of
whatever I am, Wendy. And I give you grace. I make mistakes all the time. That's why I joke that I'm probably going to disagree with whatever I said a month ago, because every single day I'm learning. And every single week, I have a nosebleed of some kind. So I'm learning every day, like everyone, like the listener. So I'm not some person on a high horse pretending like I have every single answer, but happy to share my story. And we maybe have a couple pieces of wisdom we can pull from that. So you mentioned it. COVID was a whirlwind. I don't even want to go into it. We all kind of shared a collective trauma of sorts during COVID. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was going to, at least for my life, be a bit of a blessing in disguise, because prior to COVID, I was in a corporate role, sales executive for a large marketing firm. And I'll be honest with you, I was wearing a mask. If you were to ask me how things were, fantastic. Love the office space I get to work in. I'm on like the 15th floor. We have a view of the city. It lights up at night. Everything's great. I'm wearing a suit to work. And I was pretending I was playing the role of someone who was happy in their role as an executive. For like I was pretending like it was good. But I sometimes hesitate to say it, but what, are you going to come arrest me? I would self-prescribe myself Xanax. So every Monday morning, I would take a Xanax because the stress. And on the other end of things is I was over drinking, I was oversleeping, I was staying up late. So Monday would come, and Monday was the classic, oh, it's a Monday. And I'd pop a Xanax to get through the day, put on that mask and pretend that nothing was wrong. And COVID hits. And since I'm in sales and it's marketing, but it's mostly video production all across the United States, well, what do you think happens? There's no travel, there's no in-person, there's no video, so there's no sales, there's no fulfillment. If anything, there's chargebacks and complaints. And let's be real, like people that are in sales have a book of business. It's hard to pay everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the books look like. All I know is I got let go, and everything that I thought was perfect and I thought that was building, I found myself in a dark place and had to start over. And by now it blows my mind that that was like 3 years ago. But in the first year, I was able to replace my sales executive income. Year two, actually, I plateaued. So it's not like it's to the moon and everything we do. And now it blows my mind that it's been a few years since COVID started, but I'm a completely different man than I was just a few years ago. And who knows? Like, that's why I joked that I was a different person last month. I continue to try to build the man I get to become.
That's beautiful. I could not agree with that sentiment more that, that I truly believe that the path to longevity is just lifelong learning. And
Mm.
so I agree with you there. And that point of disconnection that you're describing with the Xanax on a Monday to the point where you are now, I mean, that's a tremendous growth process. What do you think were some of the things that you could put a that you could describe the ways that you've changed from those Xanax Mondays to today?
It's so many things. So I'll tell you what I used to do and it works, but I'll tell you what was wrong with it. So I picked up a book years and years ago, like probably 8 years ago, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. I won't go through the whole book. It's incredible, but the system's simple. Sleep, affirmations, visualization, visualizing who I'm going to become, exercise, let's get the blood flowing, reading, preferably nonfiction or something creative, just get the creative juices going, and then scribing, which is writing. So savers, sleep, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, scribing. I was doing that for 7 to 8 years. I had a great morning ritual. I'd chug a glass of water. I would go and I was focused and I was very task oriented and I had efficient days and I had efficient mornings. But imagine you see the North Star, but you're running backwards while you're looking at it. I ended up being that person because when it comes to alcohol abuse, looking at things like porn and stuff like that way more than I ever should, to binging, to working in a toxic work environment, to losing my creative juices and my love of music because I was so focused on work and losing my creativity. On paper, again, I was doing all the right things and everything I just said, from reading to writing to gratitude to visualization in the mirror and affirmations, like all of this stuff is incredible. All of this stuff works, but it wasn't working to the capacity that it could because Ben was getting in his own way with the drinking, with the binging, with the bad environment, with friends that I love, but were on a different career and life path than me. So COVID again was the big shuffle where since I got completely displaced from my job, my people, anything, that was that inward moment that I started to realize that I was doing a lot of things right, but then a lot of things were actually in direct disalignment with what I needed to get. So it wasn't even learning anything new or doing something new. It was actually getting rid of. Everyone talks about like self-care and adding things. For me, it was getting rid of things that were my self-care was getting rid of the things that were hurting me.
Wow. Yeah. I love the way you describe that and also the way you describe it with there's no shaming yourself for having been, doing those things. And I think it's so common for so many Americans for us to we know what we're supposed to do. And oftentimes we're doing those things, like you're saying, chugging a glass of water, or meditating, or getting our exercise. But those things that disconnect us that you're describing, if someone's in that position, how did you find your way to just remove the numbing behaviors and the disconnecting behaviors? Because that can be a real challenge for people.
Yeah, it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's always a long game. Like I wish I could just morph into, I just hired a personal trainer literally less than 3 months ago. It's almost been 3 months. I didn't just wake up with strong muscles. Like 3 to 4 days a week, I have to go in and grind. So, what do you want? What is required to get there, and start doing it? And what's hurting you? What's required? Why is that hurting you? How can we get rid of it? So, when it comes getting rid of things, like I had a moment that was really eye-opening for me, and now I call it the mirror test. I didn't know it was a mirror test, but affirmations, and just the briefest brief on affirmations, if anyone doesn't know what it is, it's affirming who you are and becoming that person. So I'm an open channel for creative ideas. I act as if I already have what I want. I attract money openly and freely. I would do these affirmations in the mirror, but I was bloodshot. I was like checking the box like it was a chore, and I didn't believe myself. And the mirror test is when you look in the mirror and you can affirm anything you want. I understand it helps the subconscious, but if you also subconsciously know you're a liar, it's not actually going to come true. So if you look yourself in the mirror and you don't look like the person you want to become, if you look like the person that is, you don't even recognize yourself, like that's the scariest thing, not recognizing myself, looking in the mirror and being like, who the heck is this person? So when you look in the mirror, are you satisfied with what you did at the end of the day? Are you satisfied with what's on your agenda? And if not, this is going to be an individual process. You possibly might have to make a change. And it was very sobering for me, quite literally, but I made a change. And for what it's worth, Wendy, I'm not a life coach. I'm not a consultant. I don't do any of this stuff. I'm just like a dude that likes music and marketing and has a marketing company. But it wasn't until I saw my darkness that I actually started to be really successful. So I'm just speaking from experience here.
Wow. I mean, that's that shadow work that people talk about. I don't know if you've ever heard that term,
Heard of it.
but yeah, I mean, it really is just looking at that dark side that can really disconnect us from our highest potential. And it's empowering for other people to hear, people who have broken through that side. And I do believe it's a constant battle. Like things will come back in for us that, we're there, and it's always a work in progress. But that concept of, people oftentimes talk about motivation. And something that I've realized through a lot of conversations and in my own life is that sometimes you have to do things before you're actually motivated to do them, right? Do you have an experience with motivation versus habit and how those two things are intertwined?
It's interesting. I don't know if this exactly answers the question, but it's front of mind because at the time of this recording, tomorrow, so I went to SUNY Brockport State University, New York, Brockport, and I'm coming in as a guest to talk to the students about LinkedIn and networking, because a lot of people think LinkedIn's just a job board, and a lot of them want to be, they're communication students. So I want to talk about building a personal brand and networking and different things you can do on LinkedIn. I don't have kids. My girlfriend is too, but I don't have kids. I've never been the one that volunteers at daycare. I'm not like, ooh, I love kids. Let's go teach them. And I'm not a huge fan of public speaking. Like I get a little nervous, but I'm like, I want to step into something that makes me uncomfortable because I even know rationally, like take emotion out of it. I know rationally these children are the future. Whether I like them or not, I need to help them the best I can. So I'm going to make myself uncomfortable, put myself into that position. And again, it hasn't happened yet. We'll see, but I'm willing to bet I'm really going to love the experience once I do it, Wendy. I just get in my own way.
Absolutely. And public speaking is one of those things that so often people are leaning into discomfort. Nobody the first time or the first 100 times likes to get up in front of a crowd and put themselves out there, right? But I couldn't agree with you.
Young adults are savages too.
100%. I have 4 of them, so that belong to me, and Yeah, at the end of the day, I often say, like, don't bring it to me past 8 o'clock at night. It'll look better tomorrow morning, and I don't want to talk about it right now. So yes, they are savages, and they have a way of seeing the world that is so different, generationally. But that's part of why I started Be Better, is because generational learning is so near and dear to my heart, because I truly believe that we all learn from each other. It's not just the older generations teaching the younger, it works the other way too. So, we all have things we can learn from each other and inspire with our stories. And so I love what you're doing, because that North Star of generational learning and healing is so near and dear to my heart. So I get it. And I love, there's something about what that next generation is experiencing that I really think human connection is what they're, just like we all are, but they're really yearning for it, because they came through COVID at a younger age. They are constantly bombarded with social media and comparison, and finding that authentic self. I think it's harder for them these days. So, I wonder, do you have a perspective on, how we can help them connect to their most authentic self? Because it's a really big challenge, and I think part of the mental health problem that everyone is experiencing too.
So this is more intuitive than science-based, because I haven't went through all the research. This is in my area study. But osmosis, we learn from people just by the energy. And this is a whole different discussion, but I think the world needs more leaders and better leaders. And the best way is to just show up in our authentic self, be empathetic, be compassionate, be put together. And even if a younger individual, less experienced, we're not any better than them. We're just farther along in the trajectory of our story. Even if they don't understand what they learned or why they learned it, through osmosis, through the energy, through just the leadership in itself, you're going to create a ripple that I think it's so cool that I'm going back to the college I went to, because I was such a screw up in college. And I guarantee I learned 1,001 things that I'm not quite sure how to attribute. It was the way the teacher greeted me. It was the way that the video we watched in class showed a concept. We learn all these micro learning lessons, and whether or not we have them all memorized, they're databases in the back of our head. So the best thing we can do is show up as good educators, as good leaders, as just good humans trying to help someone. And I want to just say hope. I think it's almost guaranteed that if we show up as good people, we'll have a better place. But put a little hope in the system that this younger adult, this mentee, is going to hear something, even just the one smallest thing, take it and run with it. That's intuitive.
Yeah, no, I think, I think that's just part of being real and leading by example. And I think the best leaders do.
This is why this is your podcast.
No, I love these conversations, and, the deeper meaning of intuition. And when you say, there always is science out there, and I love it when I find science that backs up my intuition, and it happens fairly often. Yeah. But, I think the human experience and sharing that is just something that no matter where this world goes, AI is going to make our lives easier in a lot of ways, but we're always going to need this ability to relate to each other. And I think sharing our stories is one of the most impactful ways to do that, which is why I love doing this podcast. And there was something that caught my ear when you were talking about being in college and saying I think you said a screw up, or you did screw up. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of kids in that next generation now. Like, let's say you're not a straight A student and you're not bound for Harvard, or, the world puts all of these pressures on kids that there's a certain way to perform or be successful. And what do you say to that?
I think that every experience we have is in preparation for who we get to become in the future. So you mentioned it earlier, like not shaming ourselves. I almost want to be like void of outcome. Just accept, like, I did well, great, let's do more well. I did poorly. Great. Let's figure out what I did wrong and do it differently next time. Um, a lot of people ask this question. I've asked it before. It's a fun podcast question, but like advice for your past self. Like if you go back in
Yes.
time and ask your past self, my past self wouldn't take my current self's advice, probably. I would probably think I was a weirdo. Who knows? I think there's a beauty in letting the story unravel as it does and not trying to should or shame or push people in directions that they weren't meant to go in, and let them get a little nosebleeds themselves, let them learn on their own. We already touched on this, like be a leader, be a guide, be a role model, but let people make the mistakes. Like I goofed, you probably made a face when I was talking about how I was like bad in college because I was like such a goof off in college, but that goof off in college became who I get to become today. So it's like, would I change that? I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, and they're life experiences and they get to happen on one day and we don't get to go back to that day. So,
Yeah.
there are things you can do when you're 20 or 21 and then, when you get to 35 or 40, it's like that those days are gone. They don't come back. So I definitely encourage younger people not to feel that pressure to push forward, but really just learn how to be their best self in today. Because I think we can always be looking ahead and shoulding ourselves, like you said, to and it's really just a form of shaming and it slows us down and it disconnects us from our best self. So yeah, I love that.
And Wendy, I missed a huge point where you started with like social media and the access to information and the access to everybody's cooler than you, everybody's wealthier than you, everyone has a more attractive life, a more attractive girlfriend, boyfriend, lives in a better place. It's so easy to should ourselves, and everyone's shoulding us. This is the way to be rich. This is the way to be wealthy. It's never been harder to truly find our, because back in the way day, I wasn't alive during this day, but you'd have a stick, a rock, no television, no transportation hardly at all, and you would just be one with your thoughts. You had no other choice. Now I don't even know what thoughts are mine because I can't even walk out a door without an advertisement, picking up my phone. It's a crazy world. I think that's a great opportunity um, to be curious, but it's difficult. I can't pretend like it's not.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And there's something that comes through my podcast a lot and just, on any healing journey, which I think life for anybody is it's a learning journey, but it's also a healing journey because things
Mm.
happen, right? And we're imperfect humans, so we're bumping into each other all the time. And I think that on that healing journey, we have to learn to be kinder to ourselves and to sit with our feelings. And sitting with our feelings, I think, is one of the hardest things that humans have to do, especially nowadays with all the noise. And yet it is the thing where it's the place we have to start to be able to move past where we are. So do you have any experience? I'm sure you do, but or advice for how to sit with some of those more uncomfortable feelings that happen on this healing journey?
I was gonna ask you. I wanted
Mm.
you to go a little.
I have lots of thoughts on that, but yeah, go ahead. I'll let
I
you
want to
start.
I want to hear your thoughts on it, but the simplest way I can put it for me, that's very, it's interesting. I'm a super rational male, and I only recently started like getting more in tune with my heart and my soul. And part of that came from places of like total emptiness. But the only way I would find the place of total emptiness as a rational dude is to put it in my calendar. So Tuesday, 8 to 9, I'm putting on an eye mask. I'm going to put on headphones that are noise canceling. I'm going to take some CBD, put on binaural beats, which is just sounds. And I'm going, I lose it. I turn it into a game. I lose if I can't make it an hour. And I turn it into like a game. And it sucks. And then eventually you have pure acceptance that to win the game, I need to get through the hour. Why be miserable? I don't get that hour back. Why spend it? And the brain chatters. And here's the thing, there's no win or losing your experience. Like sometimes you're more hyperactive than other times. Once in a while, I just have like pure emptiness and bliss. And a small example, I won't get into all the details, but I spent 8 months considering and launching a new product. I talked to like 40 people about it. I built price points and the whole system. And then I was sitting one day, and it's hard to explain other than I just had that aha moment that I didn't want to launch the product. And the reason, in short, is the amount of time and energy I had to put into it was impossible. The vision was good, but it was impossible unless I hired like 10 people. And I didn't want to hire 10 people. So was there a lot of money? Sure. Was there a lot of opportunity? Sure. But I had to dedicate the next 5 to 10 years of my life to actually see it through. And I realized I didn't want to. And I even got advice the next day. Well, find ways to outsource and build. It's like, no, I just scratched the entire thing because it didn't feel right. But I wasn't in that feeling until I forced myself to think. And then my brain went there and I had that click. I've been transactional trying to build this, but it doesn't feel right. It's hard to explain other than it just happened.
Yeah. I mean, that is the clarity that comes with that alignment. And it really does only come when our monkey mind quiets down. Right. Like,
yeah.
And I'm that is such great advice for, and I have to say, like the men out there learning how, because there's a lot of talk out there with, the masculine and the feminine and how, I'm just a firm believer that we all need to be leading from our strengths, right? I don't need to be a man. I'm not going to lead like a man. Doesn't mean I'm not strong. Doesn't mean I'm not a leader, but we all have different, strengths in the way that we view the world. And the way that you described finding that quiet time is a very task-oriented manly way to look at mindfulness. And so I think that's awesome. And even the way you described it, then the gamifying and all of that, the competition to quiet your mind, like brilliant. I've never heard it described that way. And yet it works. And for me, as an athlete, it really came through yoga because it was very hard for me I went to yoga to stretch and maybe reduce injuries and make my body feel better. And I had no idea what it was going to do for my mind. And that is what led me into mindfulness and learning how to quiet my mind. And then the intuition and the strokes of genius that come through those quiet moments when everything falls away. So I use my yoga practice for that a lot. And then that graduated to a mindfulness practice where I can kind of sit and I don't have to move. But at first it was very much a moving meditation that got me there. And then my other way of I've always been a writer. So I'm with you on the scribing. Like I tell people I might write ugly and just free write. You'll be shocked at what your brain will let go of and unleash and the things that you'll realize that you didn't know. So, those are my top two to really feel my feelings and understand, why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And it takes time, in this world where everything is task oriented and we have a million things to do every day and there's so much noise. I encourage people constantly to just lean in to the quiet, no matter, it does feel scary at first, but there's nothing like it.
I love you talked about yoga kind of being a moving meditation. And people might say, well, I don't have an hour in my day to etch in another activity. Even earlier, Ben talked about subtracting activities. Well, I don't, first off, we want to be a scientist. Let's try different things. Let's have hypotheses here. And let's say you go running and every time you run, you put on a podcast. What happens if you don't wear earbuds? Try it. You're still going to go
Yeah.
on that run. Take the earbuds out this time. Next time you're in the car, maybe just drive in silence. See what happens. Let's
Yep.
be a, you don't have to do anything that isn't already in your day, but sometimes subtracting a single stimuli will help you have a little more clarity on the other stimuli that you maybe have been neglecting.
Right. And we're always looking. I mean, I know you and I are this way. Like when you're a learner, when you're a curious person, you're always looking to add wisdom. And there's so much out there now, but you're right. It's in the taking away and in the quiet moments that maybe you'll process your own wisdom, and it's going to have filtered in through 1,000 different podcasts or things that you've read, but you got to give yourself the downtime to let it come in to your own consciousness, because it's going to mean something different to you than it means to anybody else. And yeah, I love
True.
that. Yeah. So, a little pivot to your business and the way that you've gotten into this marketing world, because you help other people find opportunities, and you just described, the one that you thought of and let go. But how do you help people really discover where their opportunities lie?
That's a great question. I wish I was better at that specifically. The thing I'm best at is I'm a legal steroid. I am an amplifier. I come from a music background, music industry, was a music promoter. I have an eye or an ear for different things. So what I'm great at as a marketer is taking something that's already working and amplifying it. Where I'm weaker than some people is getting to the working part. So there's someone way more qualified than me to come up with the ideation. I can come up with ideas a day, but the ideation, the framework, the systems, the plan, get to 10,000 in sales just to prove that it's a model. Other people are better at that than me. My sweet spot is I love what Wendy's doing here. I know that there is a place in the market for more of that, and I know there's an audience. What I'm really good at is amplifying that. And it's really half the time, it's not doing anything amazing or complicated or unheard of. It's they already are doing a great job helping their. I have an esthetician client. I'll use her as an example. She does an incredible job. She can't. She hardly. She. I almost said she can. She gets one, two bad reviews because some people are just rotten and angry at everybody. 98% of her reviews are like glowing at how good she is. So, but she doesn't understand the internet. Like she doesn't do that. She understands the body, the face, the skin. So all I do is I take those reviews and write it in a way that it reaches the audience. I optimize her website so it ranks high on Google. I don't do anything to make her business better. I just amplify what she already has going on, and then it's a win-win. So, I know I kind of walked around your question,
No,
but that's
yeah,
my sweet spot.
I love it. And I think that it's actually the integrity in that answer is amazing, because I think you hear marketing and there's so many people out there that will tell you, you can do this or you can do that, or I can help you, pay me this and I will. And for you to say like, this is my sweet spot, and, maybe seek somebody else out if you're looking for this, like you don't always hear that in business. And I think that is, I come part of one of the core principles of Be Better is just that conscious capitalist mindset that, we're Americans. We all need to make money to, raise our families and live good lives. But there needs to be core principles behind that are health minded, that have integrity, that have the greater good at heart, because I truly believe that's the only way a capitalist society survives, is when we still also have common principles that we all care about, that take care of the whole, not just take care of the person who's making the money. So, my hat's off to you in the way you describe that, because I think it's really, really important. And I think we're in a tough spot in America in a lot of larger industries where, the dollar is the end all. And so, I love to see businesses where, there's a heart in there that cares about the client and, society as a whole. So it's big, but it takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to say, I'm not this, I'm that, because a lot of people just want to be everything to everybody,
Yeah. So, I mean, if you came to me, Ben, I want to work with you. Shut up. I want to work with you. And I knew it's as the person receiving this, you want to say yes, but you say yes. Even for some people, it takes a lot of nosebleeds. For me, I said yes to one wrong client, actually, technically two wrong clients. And I didn't want to do that again. It wasn't worth the time. It wasn't worth the mental energy. It wasn't worth, if I can't help someone, it's just going to ruin me. And I can take that time and actually help someone I can help. But it took screwing up twice for me to realize that. I took on clients I shouldn't have taken on. I made that mistake. And that's just one of those woes of being an entrepreneur, I suppose. Yeah. I'm sure I'll do it again. I'm sure I'll do it again.
What do you think was the motivation, or like, how did I know we learn from the mistake, but in the moment when you made that decision, is it people pleasing? Is it, I needed, it seemed like a great client, or it's a good paycheck? Like what made you choose that? And then what do you look for now when you are picking a client?
So without disclosing specific info, the two examples, one, I was confident I could do something I couldn't do because I had never done it before. So I told them I could do it, even though I was confident it would work, and it didn't. So I just ended up looking silly. And then the second version, they were a contractor. They were going to remodel our house, and I was going to work with them on barter. And I actually could help them. But this was a scenario where I got into business with the wrong person. And the short version is they remodeled the house, said, sorry, we actually don't need any marketing, but you owe us X amount of money. And it just left us with a big bill that I wouldn't have. I mean, I wanted the house remodeled. I didn't want it all done in 2 months. I thought that we had an agreement here. So suddenly they're like threatening that they're going to put a lien on my house. And I'm like, you have a signed contract for 12 months. I'm here to serve you. So the first situation was me trying to do something that I couldn't do and being overly ambitious. And then the other situation was getting in the room and signing contracts with the wrong people, which is the most devastating thing ever, because working with the wrong people just sucks the soul out of you.
Amen. I've been there, and it's the pitfalls of the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And you have a vision for something, and you think that this is where I'm supposed to be. But if you have the wrong partner or the wrong client, it can be a major life lesson, and hopefully not a disaster. But yeah, definitely something you got to pivot from and learn from, and hopefully not do again. Because yes, I have learned that lesson the hard way, and yet, you live to see another day, and it makes you a little tougher. But yeah, that is definitely, that's business, right? And that the entrepreneurial lifestyle is not for the faint of heart. That's for sure. But
and I don't know if I gave this metaphor last time, but I'll give it 1,000,000,000 times. There's a mistake, there's a failure. You wish you did something, you start shutting yourself. Instead of throwing that away and pretending like it never happened, you take it and you treat it like it's a brick. So you've got a failure, that's a brick. You've got a success, that's a brick. You win, you have a success, you place that brick. You fail, you're upset, you place that brick. Because both the failures and bricks are foundation of the home and the life you're building. So the biggest mistake we can make is, blame someone else, not accept the fact we made a mistake. Like, we got to take ownership of that mistake to the point that we're willing to take that brick and have it be part of our home, have it be part of our future, have it be a story that we tell. So it doesn't matter if it's a failure or a success, you still place that freaking brick, and then you have a strong foundation long term, because you're placing bricks every single day.
That is a beautiful analogy. I love it. It's fantastic. And exactly why I started this podcast the way I did,
Oh.
because I kicked myself 16 different ways this sent. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. I hadn't recorded a podcast in like 2 weeks. I'm coming up with excuses in my head, like, why, how come you didn't push record? And I was all of a sudden you're just like, why am I doing this to myself? And it really is, it's saying it out loud, like, this is the mistake I made, and remembering what it feels like, so maybe you don't do it again, but you'll cross that bridge when you come to it. But it's little things, it's big things, but it is definitely taking ownership. It's such a huge sign of the maturity that we gain. And if we can teach that, something I definitely try to impart to my kids, because it's a really hard thing to admit you screwed up. But the hole or the path or the numbing that follows if we can't admit that we screwed up is way worse than just sitting through that moment. So great analogy. I love that. And the one thing that's also, I love music. So I've heard you come back to that music, the music industry, and saying that you got started there. And I truly believe that music is a really healing force in society. And I wonder, how you got started on that path, and what it's led, or how it's added to your life today.
Oh my gosh, that's another long story.
Okay.
And it is a healing force. It's a universal language. It's something we can understand without understanding. Like, it just makes you feel. And I think there's something special and profound about that. Like, if there's a God made music. Like, let's be real. Like,
amen. From my son playing the piano in my house to, I listen to frequencies. Last night I just I turned off my computer and just flipped on the CMAs just to see people, just live music is just amazing. So could not agree with you more. And I think being involved in that industry, which I never have been, but I'm just fascinated with singers, songwriters, and what they add to the world. So what did you do in the music industry?
Yeah, well, it all started with me being a bit of a lost soul, which is perfect to do things in music, because without giving you the whole long story, I had a rough homestead. Like, I didn't really feel connected at home, and I was obsessed with basketball. So I'd spend all my free time playing basketball, had a jersey for every single day of the week. But I ended up being the shortest boy in school, literally the shortest boy. The only one shorter was a little girl named Olivia Lee. So what happens when you're the kid with the basketball jersey? I had great skills. I was good at basketball, but I was tiny. The big growth spurted guys would push me around. They'd make fun of me. They'd bully me. They'd smack my lunchbox, that whole stuff. And I lived to be 5'8", so I wasn't put on this earth to play basketball. There's no future there. But it was around high school time where two people came into my life. Well, my brother was already into my life, but I just finally started paying attention. And then a good friend of mine, Brendan, came in, and they both were obsessed with music. So they would burn me mixtapes. We would like look up stuff on YouTube back when it would barely load, and like just really loved music. And there was local bands coming out of my city of Rochester. So we ended up being the people handing out flyers. I grandfathered up to setting up MySpace pages, then Facebook pages, selling merchandise, wearing the merchandise. And the reason I tell this end of the story, because it's so serendipitous, because I was marketing well before I ever knew what it was. But music was that first time where I felt like I was part of a tribe. Like I was the shy, small basketball player that didn't have a ton of friends. And then once I found music and I found a band and I found a community, it was like you couldn't shut me up. The quiet kid you couldn't shut me up because I was passionate about it. And I just think it's serendipitous that I still love basketball, still love sports, but music was the bridge that got me into marketing and really started to I was an antisocial child. And that's the first step to me becoming who I am today and actually not being afraid to talk to a stranger, you know?
Wow. Yeah. It's that serendipity in life, and that the creative bridge is so powerful. But it's amazing to see the things that, and I don't think kids know these days, like, to connect, to be able to be curious enough to connect to something that maybe isn't front and center or isn't cool, but just to stay curious and find that thing that lights you up. Because yeah, I just think music is a healing force in this world. And I don't care what kind it is. Like I said, frequencies, I'm a country music fan, but like everything out there is just, it really is a game changer for, mental health and the way that we experience the world. So that's really, really cool.
You know what's funny about the story I just told too? And I live and die music. I love music, but the story was less about the music. It's more just about finding a community of people that love you. Because if you feel lost, it doesn't have to be music. It could be chess. It could be sports. It could be anything, cheerleading. It could be anything you choose. Just finding that community where you feel safe is huge, because we can't operate, our nervous system can't operate if we don't feel safe. So it doesn't have to be music. For you and I, we'll do music all day, but if it's not music, still find something, I think is really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you learn that about your nervous system?
I don't know.
Like I don't think a lot of times, it took me a long time to even know what my nervous system was. And now it's something that I just want to teach constantly, because people don't realize how we interact with the world, how much our nervous system has to do with the way we interact in the world. And so, yes, that sense of community and not having to do things alone is so huge. And you have this really cool way of bringing people in, and having people see what is special about them, and we often can't see that for ourselves. And so that sense of community and having those people that can see that in us, and then trusting them so that we can start to believe those things about ourselves, it's huge. So I want people to know how to connect with you, and if they need marketing research, if they want to listen to your podcast, what's the best way for people to find you?
Cool. And we clicked record today, right?
We did.
Can I tell you,
right at the beginning.
Can I tell you a secret, Wendy?
Sure.
So part of me is bummed we clicked record, because I would do this with you another 12 times.
Fantastic. Maybe we need a series. Yeah.
I would do this again and again with you. I love the show. I want to open with that. If someone is listening to the show, it's possible I shared this and brought you in and you enjoyed this interview, but 98% of the people, they come back every week for you, Wendy. So you're the star. Leave her a review, 5 stars, show some love. Real Business Connections is my podcast. It's my podcast concierge firm, all sorts of stuff. You type in Real Business Connections anywhere you found this, or just Google it. That's where you can find me. But show your girl some love first, and then we'll hang out.
Well, thank you very, very much. And when you say that you have a network of podcasts, and I know there is a lot of wisdom out there, and there are a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you've seen that commercial. It's an insurance commercial. It's cracking me up these days. There's like, oh, there's a podcast for that. There's a podcast for that. And it's really funny, but it's finding that individual messenger. And I just love the way that, you see people, and it's a gift and a skill. So thank you for your kind words. And yeah, I love doing this. So hopefully many more to come, and I'd love to have you back. And, thank you so much for sharing your journey, because it's really inspirational and important for other people to hear. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah. I'm Wendy Jones, and this is What I Meant to Say. And I'm here to remind you just to be real, be you, and be better. Thank you for joining us on What I Meant to Say, another production of Inspired Edutainment, brought to you by Be Better Media.